Welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. And this is the M.A. Neal Financial Services section of our program because we are talking about the Senior Forum this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks so much for being on the program.
Great to be here.
So let's talk about the Senior Forum, which is coming up on September the 21st at 8:30 at the First Presbyterian Church in Bath. What is, I guess, maybe the goal of the Senior Forum?
Well, for years and years, we've had a senior forum the third Thursday in September, and it was really a way of bringing people together for the public hearing, actually. But I think a lot of people don't attend public hearings unless they have something burning that they need to say.
Yes.
And so we make it a fun day. We make it educational and have a nice luncheon and fellowship, and it's just really a popular event.
When you say public hearing, what does that entail?
Well, every state, every Office for the Aging is required by the state to have a public hearing to gain input from the community about what our annual plan will be for the coming year.
Oh, okay.
And so we don't want to operate in a vacuum. We think we know all the answers, but we probably don't. And I just really enjoy hearing what people have to say, and a lot of it is just really based on their experience, helping an older person maybe navigate health care or long-term care, and those perspectives are really important to us, and we do adjust the sales based on what people say.
And you say it's a public hearing, but there's also more to it because you also have guest inspirational speakers.
Right, yeah. Our advisory council, they choose the topics every year, and we usually have many topics, and we start narrowing it down and figuring out who can cover the topic. And this year I'm really excited because the world is really quite chaotic right now, and particularly for older adults. I think they have a perspective of longevity where things used to be so simple, and now they are not. And so one topic that we settled on was how to stay positive through life's challenges, and we have a professor from Ithaca College come in. And I've seen her PowerPoint presentation, and it is going to be phenomenal.
I like both the topics because I think they could relate to almost any of us. It doesn't matter what your age, how to stay positive through life's challenges and act your age. People tell me I should do that all the time.
Right. I remember my son when he was in high school said, "Ma, you have no idea how hard it is to be a teenager."
I'm sure.
And I think every phase of life has its own challenges.
So those are great two topics. Now, I'm sure with the public hearing and there's a luncheon and, as you said, fellowship, people should pre-register, but it's got to be pretty close to...
You know, every year when we announce the date and the topics, we fill up really quickly. When I left the office yesterday, we had some slots available, so they do go quickly, And we have a following. We have the same people come every year.
Oh, isn't that nice? So can they still be involved? Let's say it books up and they didn't get in time and they missed the luncheon and the speakers. Can they still be a part of this public hearing?
They can. I always say I welcome input throughout the year, not just during this period where we're trying to build the plan for 2024. So if you go on our website, by the end of the week, we should have the survey for input. So if you're not sure what types of information we're looking for, the survey will guide you. So that survey is open till November 1st.
Oh, okay.
But a lot of people say, "Hey, I don't have a computer. What's a website?"
Right.
They can call our office and we can send them the survey. They can do it over the phone. There's many ways to get input.
How long is the survey?
It's not long. It's about 4 pages, and it's multiple choice, so
That's
there's no right or wrong answer. And we try to tease out people's opinions about things like transportation, health care. We really promote aging in place. So if you've been in your house for 50 years and you're 80 years old, maybe it does need repairs. Well, physically, maybe you're not able to do that. Maybe your kids moved out of state.
Right.
How do you age in place? So handyman a lot of times bubbles to the top of the list of things that people need, and repairs are costly now. So that's the type of thing we're looking for information on.
Is it difficult to put together all those surveys and then look at it the next year?
It is difficult. thank you, SurveyMonkey, that can pull that data.
Yes.
And we do really reflect back on it. If we're planning something halfway through the year, we'll say, well, let's see what the survey said. So it's not like we put it on a shelf someplace.
And we're talking about the Senior Forum, September 21st, 8:30 a.m. at the First Presbyterian Church in Bath. Pre-register. It sounds like it's filling up quick, though, so if you miss that, please be involved in the public hearing, and they can contact you, or they can go to the Steuben County, I'm assuming, website to get this. Okay.
Right. SteubenCountyNY.gov is the website, and just navigate to the Office for the Aging website. We also have an email address on that website, so if people just have a concern or a thought, they just want to shoot an email,
Sure.
they all come to my desk.
And for the Senior Forum itself, is there a cost?
There's no cost for it. We are required to request contributions towards the cost of the meal, and if you're over 60, it's a $4 suggested
Okay.
contribution.
So it's suggested. Okay.
It's a great meal.
Yeah, well, there you go. How's the planning going overall?
It's really great. It's the work of many. I am very impressed with my staff that all pull together. They all have very busy jobs, but it's all hands on deck for the forum.
Let's talk a moment about the Office for the Aging in general. We have a lot of people on from Steuben County and Chemung County, and sometimes you don't realize all the services our counties offer. And one of them, of course, is Office for the Aging. What would you say, again, to steal kind of my first question, the goals for the Office for the Aging are, and the services you provide?
That's a great question, because there is a lot of confusion about what we do, and most people know about home-delivered meals.
Yes,
That's like our senior nutrition is.
That's your bread and butter, no
that's
pun intended.
Literally, yes. But offices for the aging across the state all have the same core services. So home-delivered meals, we do home care, which is non-medical, and
Okay.
a lot of people don't understand that. It's not nursing care, but maybe it's bathing help or housekeeping, things
Okay.
like that. Yeah, so in transportation, usually on the surveys, that's the number one need that people identify. I stopped driving, and how do I get to the doctors? Yeah, so we do a volunteer program. We heavily use volunteers to achieve our goals. But you ask about the goal, and our goal is to keep people safe in the community for as long as possible with quality of life.
Well, that's honorable. You are, congratulations, retiring.
Right?
Right. That must be exciting. So what changes have you seen through the years at the Office for the Aging?
Well, I started out in caregiver services, which is a great program where we just support people who are trying to maybe help their mom or dad stay in their own home. And people used to come into the office without an appointment. We'd have a cup of tea, we'd talk about what's going on, and we would problem solve. And now the issues are just so sophisticated, and the solutions are very complex too. So I used to, meet with somebody for a half hour. Now it's an hour and a half, 2 hours to really sift through these issues. And so navigating Medicare, Medicaid, it's a lot.
And go back to what you said before, with technology, especially for people that may not use technology, everything is so dependent on that. Everything you need to sign up for. And, I had a little bit of things I had to do with the county at one point, and it's not the county's fault, but everything is technologically driven, I suppose.
It really is. And I always say we're serving two populations right now, the people who have computers and the people that don't. The people that call us, from out of state and are trying to help their mom here, they're like, just email me, Our people do it at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Sure.
So in many ways, the technology has expanded the breadth of what we can do.
Of course.
But in many ways, we've just kind of, lost that face-to-face contact. So we try to provide for both.
That's great. And we are talking about the Office for the Aging and specifically the Senior Forum on September 21st, 8:30 a.m., First Presbyterian Church in Bath. Just before we go, where can people find out more about the Office for the Aging? Obviously, take part in the public hearing and find out if there's any spots left for the Senior Forum.
Right. So many people don't know that we have 3 offices. So we're here in Corning today. We have a Corning office, so over on Bridge Street.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just off of Bridge Street there at the Senior Center. We have an office. We have one in Hornell. Of course, our main office is in Bath, but people can call us 607-664-2298. People can walk into our offices, although we strongly encourage appointments. If you have a computer, you can go to the website and look at all our services there. But, we'll help in any way that we can.
Yeah. Could you give me that phone number again in case someone asks for it?
Sure can. 607-664-2298. and that rolls to the main office, and we can get you to the local offices if that's where you are.
Well, great. Well, thanks so much for being on the show this morning. Best of luck with the senior forum, and best of luck in retirement.
Well, thank you very much, Frank. Great seeing you again.
All right. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. Stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Thank you again to Patty Baruti from the Office for the Aging for being on the program. The Senior Forum sounds like a very useful event for our senior community, but also for the future of the Office for the Aging. So I appreciate her being on the program. Okay, we have a lot to get to. Yesterday I received some texts after the program that I want to discuss, and that's going to tie in with some of our topics for the day. First, I did find this interesting before we get into, and I'm not going to go into too much depth about John Fetterman and the new dress code. I don't believe it's the biggest issue that we're dealing with today, though I do think it has some I'm not even going to say unintended consequences. I just think it's someone, and I'll show you the text in a moment, said it's kind of the new normal. And I think that's somewhat discouraging. So we are going to talk about that a little bit. But first, the big employer who is still adding jobs and that are boosting pay, you know, as many companies are slow hiring, or the public sector, the government. The government is the big employer still adding jobs and boosting pay, according to the Wall Street Journal. While many companies have been cutting staff and freezing new hires for this year, the government is laying out the welcome mat. Public sector jobs at the federal, state, and local level have risen by 327,000 positions so far in the year 2023. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that is approaching 1/5 of all new American jobs created in the first 8 months of the year. In contrast, public sector jobs accounted for 5% of employment growth during the equivalent period last year. So the bigger the government, they never slow down. Hey, it's only our money, right? Okay, so John Fetterman, let's go to our text first. Let's do that. Okay, first one, watching your show is part of my daily routine. Frankly Speaking is one of my morning vitamins. Well, thank you so much. As I've said on the program numerous times, saying something nice about the show doesn't guarantee you'll get on. Can't hurt. And I will read negative ones. We just don't ever get them. And the next one, here we go. This is in reference. Seems to me the Senate dress code is just one more signal of our declining value system. It's slovenly and just shows a lack of class, in my opinion. However, the bigger picture for me is that it is a setup, in my opinion, to normalize all of the odd behaviors. So in the unlikely event they are ever held accountable for any of their indiscretions, they can just say, "What are you talking about?" It's the so-called the new normal. They don't even try to hide their disgust for the United States anymore, but we shouldn't accept it. Everything is a joke, but the only problem is some of us aren't laughing, not in the least. So in that vein, let's talk a little bit when we come back about Fetterman. I got to take a short break. I apologize there. I don't want to dive in too deep and then realize because we're already running a few minutes behind. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. So just quickly on Fetterman, what's really weird, so you know Nate Silver that makes predictions, you know, they sometimes hold him up as a really good a predictor of how elections will go, but boy, it sure seems like he gets it wrong a lot. But anyway, so Nate Silver from 538 tweeted out or X'd out or whatever it's called now, basically saying, and I've got to paraphrase because he cussed, but basically saying, I want to start a party, a political party where you don't care what John Fetterman wears and you don't care what Lauren Boebert does in a theater. So really defending Fetterman. And Fetterman comes back in for whatever reason and says, I dress like you predict. Taking a dig, and it was his staffer that did it, but taking a dig at not only Nate Silver, but again, the way that he dresses himself. Former President Donald Trump's senior advisor, Stephen Miller, said, John Fetterman finds it hilarious that he's turned the Senate into a coddling daycare for an emotionally stunted man-child with severely arrested development. Whew. Mediaite staffer Isaac Shore wrote, in which John Fetterman attacks Nate Silver for arguing that the controversy over his wardrobe is driven by partisans. Oh, and which he dunks on him by asserting that Silver's work is as shoddy as his attire. Bizarre all the way around. It is very bizarre. Now, Susan Collins, of course, from Maine, Republican from Maine, more of a moderate or maybe independent. If you're not familiar with her, this is her there. She says with the new dress code, she may go to the Senate wearing a bikini. She then later, I guess because people have no sense of humor, I guess she had to go back and say, obviously I'm not going to wear a bikini. But the fact is, as I understand it, I could. So again, I'm rushing through this story quick because I don't think it's the biggest issue that we're facing. Though I think there's a really good piece by Rich Lowry at the New York Post, and there's actually two. But this one is specifically by Rich Lowry. Fetterman wins dress code battle and beclowns the institution, saying that John Fetterman's Senate legacy is now set. He's a guy who made it possible to dress like a slob. What the Missouri Compromise was to Henry Clay, what the Civil Rights Act of 1957 was to Lyndon Johnson, Carhartt sweatshirts and baggy shorts will be to John Fetterman. The Pennsylvania senator is the poster boy, if self-indulgent sloppiness is your thing, for his chamber dropping a dress code that required senators to dress in business attire when appearing on the Senate floor. Philadelphia Eagles fans dress more carefully on game day, says Rich Lowry. If he showed up at almost any service or working-class job in America dressed this way, his supervisor would give him a stern talking to and insist that he have more respect for himself, his colleagues, and his customers. And there is a picture of him. But as it happens, he's only a United States senator, so he can wear whatever he pleases. And this piggybacks in before we go to our next break. Again, I don't believe this to be the biggest issue of the day. But just quickly, Fetterman has won the battle, but at the price of beclowning himself and his institution. Not that he cares. And the New York Post editorial board put together, the worst dressed senator, John Fetterman, strikes a blow for elite slobs only. The man's an elected representative of the great state of Pennsylvania, serving in an august legislative chamber. Would it have been too much to ask him to put on a tie? Apparently, yes. So they changed the rules for him. But note that Fetterman wears his dude duds, not merely for comfort, but to bolster his bogus working man hero image, though he grew up rich and sponged off his parents until he was almost 50 years old. Hilariously, though, it turns out to be a license only for the elite to slob it up. And this is why I bring it up. The rule is only loosened for senators, not their staff. And now Fetterman did have some health issues, so you know that he probably has quite a large staff that does a lot of his work for him. I don't think that's saying anything out of school. So Fetterman can show up in whatever he wants, but aides and staffers have to dress like they have a real job. But that's Democrat politics in the year of our Lord 2023, writes the New York Post. The big guys get their way while the little people do as they're told and do the actual work. So there we go. That's all we have on the new dress code change in the Senate. When we come back, a couple things here about Biden, a couple things here. Oh, we have a few New York State issues I hope to get to as well. As always, you can contact me to weigh in on any of these topics that we'll be discussing, or if you have any questions because you missed something in our interview with Patty Baruti about the senior forum on September 21st at 8:30 for the Office for the Aging. If you have any questions, you can contact me. I can get you into contact with who you need to speak to. So anyway, enough of that. We'll take that off the screen, and we will be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Thank you again for joining us here on Frankly Speaking. I'm your host, Frank Agam. Broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. As you are probably aware by now, Hunter Biden has filed a lawsuit against the IRS. The lawsuit is not about the legitimacy of the IRS investigation of Mr. Biden over the past 5 years or any decision to penalize Mr. Biden for any failure to comply with his obligation under the tax laws, said Biden's attorney. Rather, the lawsuit is about the decision by IRS employees their representatives, and others to disregard their obligations and repeatedly and intentionally public disclose and disseminate Mr. Biden's protected tax return information outside the exceptions for making disclosures in the law. So what the lawsuit seeks is $1,000 for each and every unauthorized disclosure of his tax return information made by the two men. Also, he is battling federal prosecutors currently. Does not want to make the initial court appearance on federal firearm charges. He wants it to be held via video conference, according to an order filed by a federal judge on Monday. Christopher Burke issued the order asking Hunter's lawyers to explain no later than today why they want his arraignment held via video conference, a request prosecutors have opposed. The judge gave prosecutors until Wednesday to provide a reason why the arraignment should happen in person. So we'll keep you updated on that. Just going through some things quickly here. Now and I don't say this lightly, this is troubling. Victor Nava from the New York Post reports that and it's actually coming from NBC News, that President Biden fears for his health, that he may not survive before Hunter's legal woes are resolved, that he may die, because they believe that it's going to be very extended, ongoing for quite some time. This, again, coming from NBC, which is one of the reasons I brought it up, is very surprising. Now, this is the New York Post's coverage of it. But the 80-year-old commander-in-chief fears that he won't live to see the end of his son Hunter's legal jeopardy, NBC News reported over the weekend, days after the 53-year-old was indicted in Delaware on federal gun charges. The president and the first lady are, quote, resigned to the fact that Hunter's legal problems will likely worsen in the months ahead, according to the outlet, with a source close to the family saying Joe Biden has lamented out loud that he may be dead before his son's case would be resolved. Everybody, this is quoted from NBC News, again, pretty shocking, everybody walks around on eggshells in the West Wing regarding the Hunter Biden topic. Former Jill Biden press secretary Michael LaRosa said every day this president wakes up and thinks about his deceased son, Beau, and probably cries every day. And the weight of Hunter's legal troubles is equally emotionally taxing. The Bidens are incredibly protective of Hunter. So just passing those quick updates on to you, of course, Biden. It's been a tough September. We had that story for you yesterday, talking about the many issues that President Biden is dealing with. He's taking a political hit on the Iran hostage deal with those 5 Americans returning yesterday. A lot of people making political hay out of it. And interestingly enough, from CNN, even though they do the best they can to kind of protect Biden, there's also even some criticism, if you read between the lines, in the piece by Stephen Collinson. It's opening up. Well, let me read the whole sentence before we go to break. Again, Stephen Collinson writing, President Joe Biden's deal with Iran that unlocks $6 billion in frozen funds to bring 5 imprisoned Americans home is creating the kind of terrible optics and an opening for his domestic foes that a politically weakened president can ill afford. Yet is also an example of the kind of agonizing dilemma only presidents face in their lonely Oval Office perch, and the way they often have to judge humanitarian concerns with geopolitics and domestic considerations where no easy answers exist. And the only reason I mention all this is because Gavin Newsom is out again giving interviews claiming that he's not running for president. But it is interesting to see the media, whether it's that NBC piece about his health, whether it's about the Iran situation, there does seem to be more criticism of the president. Are those in the media that would be more likely to support Biden, are they being critical because they see maybe an opportunity to get somebody in there? Because if they're going to get somebody else in there to run, they're going to have to do it soon. We're already looking at what is kind of the kickoff, the unofficial kickoff, which is Labor Day. So if they're going to do that, they realize they have to move quickly. But they, on the other hand, they can't be too critical of the president because it's still up to him. Like Joe Semplinsky said on the program last week, there's no mechanism. He's the president. All he's got to do is say, no, I'm running. So it's really all on his shoulders. It's all really, you could say, probably 100% his decision. But Gavin Newsom was a little critical of Biden, but again, making it clear he's not running for president. He said in an interview on CNN yesterday, on Monday's CNN primetime, he said, "We've been polarized." Let me take a step back. He stated that President Joe Biden is performing well and people have negative views of the economy because, quote, "we've been polarized and traumatized over the last 5 or 6 years, and we haven't had time to take a deep breath and reflect on it. What we're experiencing is not unique in the United States at all. It's a global phenomenon." He also went on to say that when asked directly, "Are you running for president?" he said, "The answer is no. I want no ambiguity. The answer is no." He's not, according to Newsom, even though he's giving interviews with Hannity, he's out campaigning everywhere, never even crossed his mind. "No, I'm not that guy. I'm just not," he told Dana Bash. But then when other Democrats have been very wishy-washy when asked about Vice President Harris, should she be on the ticket? We have, who was it last week? It was real bad, saying something like, "Well, you know, Joe hasn't made his decision yet. We'll see." And you go, wait a minute. There should be no decision. That should be pretty much set in stone, right? And Nancy Pelosi going, "Well, Joe thinks she's the best, so why not?" Hardly glowing words. Well, Newsom, he believes that Harris is absolutely the best, that's a quote, to be running with President Biden. Of course she is. Biden-Harris administration, master class in terms of performance. Bipartisan deals on infrastructure, bipartisan deals on guns and debt ceiling, on the CHIPS and Science Acts. I mean, by definition, if I think this administration, last 2.5 years, has been one of the most outstanding administrations the last few decades, and she's a member of that administration, she gets to lay and claim credit to a lot of that success. The answer is absolutely. He argued that Democrats need to get out of this sort of navel gazing about Joe Biden, and let's get going. Let's get on the train. This train has left the proverbial station. I will say, if that's what he's actually doing, Newsom, which is what he's claimed he's doing, which is campaigning kind of as a surrogate for Joe Biden, going all over and doing the Hannity thing, and there was talks of him debating DeSantis. I don't know whatever happened to that. Then he really has put his money where his mouth is. But most people think it has something to do with either running in case something changes for next year, or I guess setting up the groundwork for the next go-around. But I think most of us could agree that just the way he's handled himself seems like he's maybe more interested in case Joe decides he doesn't want another, 5 years of this, 4 years as another term, but really 5 years, all of next year and some of this year, and then the 4 years. So we've got to take a break. Please weigh in on this and all the topics of the day. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. You're watching Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. A couple comments that we received during break, and I think this is a good point. Hunter should pay for all the perks he's getting, Secret Service, Jet Service, White House, etc. RFK not getting Secret Service, and he's had 2 family members assassinated. And that's what, a story we brought to you last week, or maybe, was it yesterday? So many topics, they sometimes blend together. But yeah, being denied, RFK Jr. being denied Secret Service, I think is a very bad decision. He already had a real threat happen, I guess, late last week or over the weekend. Continuing, the only ones enjoying a so-called good economy is the Democrat Party. We are told that the economy is good. So there we go. There's a couple of quick comments. You can always reach out to me before we go on to our next topic. I'll put that back up on the screen. So according to a recent poll that came out, a Harvard Capps Harris poll, that Biden is trailing the 2024 election matchup against 3 Republican candidates. So this is a little bit different than that poll we had for you a couple weeks ago. Just the numbers. I don't know which one's more accurate. I'm not making those type of predictions. But Biden is trailing former President Trump, as well as Nikki Haley, and this is interesting to me, Senator Tim Scott, in hypothetical head-to-head matchups. I like Tim Scott is the reason why I say that's interesting, but he hasn't really gotten the coverage. I think that's media maybe being concerned at how popular he could become. He does great speeches, very inspirational story. Trump topped Biden by 4 percentage points in the online survey. with the incumbent receiving 40% support compared to Trump's 44%. A separate 15% responded they didn't know or were unsure of who their preferred candidate is. Haley beats Biden by the same margin, 4%. And then we have Tim Scott edging out Biden 39-37. Among the other GOP primary candidates, Biden performed best against Mike Pence, defeating him 42-36% in a hypothetical race. Biden also, this is interesting, topped Florida Governor Ron DeSantis 42-38, and entrepreneur Ramaswamy 39-37 in the new poll, but still impressive for Ramaswamy putting those kind of numbers up, losing by just a few percentage points in that hypothetical matchup. But that's not a bad place to be as a complete newcomer, essentially. Now, I keep mentioning these. I think this is a wrong-headed decision. I think sometimes people that really, really, really dislike Trump end up playing into his hands, maybe too easily. And here's yet another example. California Democrats are considering a unique approach to getting Trump off the ballot. It's actually not all that unique. It's the story that we've been bringing to you over and over again where they're trying to use the 14th Amendment. But let's go back to it, saying Democrats in the California legislature are trying a novel approach, according to Politico, to remove former President Trump from the state's March 5th primary ballot. But first, they need a fellow state Democrat to get on board the long shot effort. 9 California lawmakers wrote a letter to Attorney General Rob Bonta over the weekend, arguing that Trump isn't eligible to be on the ballot for inciting an insurrection. This is something that we've heard from various Democrat politicians trying to keep him off the ballot in various states. The move, which comes amid several lawsuits to keep Trump off of state ballots across the country, is unique, though, because Bonta could use his standing as California's top law enforcement officer to make this whole thing go more quickly, to expedite a state court ruling on the matter. Should the effort succeed, California could be the first state to bump Trump off its ballot, even if the ruling is ultimately overturned. So what I'm saying here, just pure optics, whatever you think about the former president, whatever you think about his chances, doesn't this play directly into his talking point that everyone's out to get him, specifically in this case, Democrats? Now, in some of the other lawsuits, you have Republicans latched onto it. When I say Republicans, people call them rhinos, whatever you want to call them. But some Republican lawyers who didn't like Trump, kind of the never Trump wing of the party, saying similar things. But this is Democrats keeping, according to all polls, the number one contender to win the Republican nomination. They're saying he shouldn't be on the primary ballot. Now, I find that interesting because primary, I thought, and it must be different by state, primary is more of a party vote than it is, pardon me, it is a party vote, but I mean it's more controlled by the party. Because look, for instance, when how it all went down with Hillary Clinton and Bernie, and how we talked about this last week, where the fix was pretty much in, because it's party rules in this scenario. But according to these lawsuits, they're saying that he should not, Democrats are saying he should not even be on the Republican primary. I just think this plays perfectly into his hands. I think this plays directly to his talking points. And as we've talked about with Joe Sempolinski, I know I quote him a lot, but I know you all enjoy having him on the program. A lot of people may not like Trump, but they really don't like to think that there's some outside factor controlling who they get to vote for and who they don't. To hear Trump talk about it's deep state, whatever term you want to put on it, it really creates more excitement. It goes back to what Trump said at the rally: I'm one indictment away from the White House. These type of things create an energy to support someone that many people may say, I don't even necessarily want him. I might like Tim Scott or Nikki Haley or DeSantis, but I really don't like how they are trying to fix the election. And in this case, you're talking Democrats going after a Republican primary vote. So that was quick. We've got a few other things we've got to get to. We are running fast this morning, and we are covering a lot of topics. Thank you to everybody who's reaching out. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, please stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. We're going to talk about some state issues and get away from the national scene. First of all, for our friends watching in Pennsylvania, I don't know if this is good or bad for you. I have numerous friends, obviously, from Pennsylvania who will come election season get very sick of the constant political ads and flyers, etc. Well, according to the Washington Examiner, the McCormick-Casey Pennsylvania matchup is lining up to be the biggest Senate race next year. David McCormick's entrance to the Senate race this week sets the stage for what has the potential to be one of next year's most important, bombastic, nice word, and expensive Senate race in the country. The Republican businessman who narrowly lost last year's primary to, you remember, Dr. Oz, will make his announcement on Thursday with no other candidates in line to jump in a Republican primary. It's a move that, in all likelihood, will pit him against Senator Bob Casey, the incumbent Democrat from Scranton, who announced earlier this year he is seeking a fourth term. So I think the important part, if you are a resident of Pennsylvania, is that line, expensive. Expensive means a lot of flyers, a lot of ads, an inundation, inundated with the back and forth and the signs. I mean, we don't get that as frequently in New York, so I feel for you. But that's going to be an interesting race to watch. Casey, it seems like I would have thought is a little more vulnerable, but yet keeps getting in every year. Well, hey, if you're from PA, you weigh in. You would know better than me. I'd love to hear from you. Now, let's also talk about New York when we come back, because I do. Yeah, there it is. When we come back, because I do have to take another short break, there's two really good pieces about New York. Then we're going to rush through, like we do, everything that we can, because we've got a couple more breaks to take, and boy, this show is going fast. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. Thanks so much for joining us. We're getting virtual waves all over the place. Also, a viewer commenting on our last topic. I too think it's unconscionable that RFK Jr. isn't given security, but totally not surprised. Yeah, I know it's really unfortunate. They have not taken him seriously. Well, I shouldn't say that. They've attacked him in a way that makes you understand that they are taking him somewhat seriously, because he started off 20% in the polls the day he announced, which I think speaks more to Biden's weakness. But I know I keep saying this, and I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but there is something fascinating watching the media attack a Kennedy. I never, ever thought we'd see the day, but that's exactly what they've done. They don't like that he's got a puncher's chance in a way. So they have called him every wild name in the book. Now, let's talk about some New York State issues before we go to our last break. There's a really interesting piece, and Scope sent it out. Scope had an amazing, Steuben County Scope had an amazing fundraiser over the weekend. But they sent out a piece from, a column, if you will, from Assembly Minority Leader Will Barclay. And it's about, if you haven't had a chance to check it out, it's about our new gun laws here in New York State. Gun owners, outdoor sportsmen, and women in stores selling firearms and ammunition will be subjected to some troublesome procedures and protocols after the new regulations went into effect last Wednesday. The crux of the changes pertain to the way background checks will be conducted, as well as new fees associated with buying guns and ammunition from your local dealership. Notably, the new laws call for the New York State Police to conduct background checks for ammunition purchases. Beginning this week, a background check is required prior to the purchase, and the responsibility for initiating the NICS background check for firearms, rifles, or shotgun purchases has shifted to the state police. Gun dealers and licensed ammunition sellers will now be required to contact the state police online to process these background checks. However, an automated phone system is expected to be active sometime soon. There will now be a $9 fee associated with each firearm purchase and a $2.50 fee for ammunition purchases to cover the new system costs. These changes are noteworthy because we have hunting season coming up. So you'll have gun and ammunition purchases increase. With the state police taking on this new responsibility, there will be delays with respect to the background checks and answering all the questions hunters will have as the new law is implemented. If you are planning to enjoy New York's exceptional hunting opportunities, budget extra time and extra money. There are legitimate concerns about the burden this new system is going to place on the businesses as well as the state police and the hunting community. Costs will go up, and it's unclear what benefits this new law will generate. So that's a quick piece by Will Barclay. There's more to it. You can search that for yourself. I just wanted to mention it because I know we've had some questions on that. I do have to take our last break and then a couple more New York State issues and then just running through our last few topics. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We are back, getting ready to wrap things up on this edition of Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. There is a new poll out. And it's from Siena College, and it's completely in reference, not completely, directly in reference to New York State and the state of New York State. And that state, to see how many times I can say that in a row, is in decline, with a worsening quality of life tied to sky-high costs of housing, rampant crime, and the migrant crisis, according to a new poll. Now, I want to highlight this is not just about New York City, though this is a part of it, obviously, but it's about the state in general. 57% of registered voters who participated in the poll, released just yesterday, said the quality of life in the Empire State is getting worse, while 27% said it was the same, and just 14% said it was better. Now, of course, it's not just Republicans, though a huge majority of Republicans, but a large majority of independents and even a plurality of Democrats all saying the quality of life in New York is getting worse. There are some of the numbers, if you can see them on your screen. 77% said the availability of affordable housing is a major problem. Now, this is interesting. I would have thought this number was a little higher, but 73% said crime is a major problem. We know that's why Lee Zeldin did so good against Hochul, because he was willing to talk about the real public safety concerns that we have in the state. 62% say the migrant crisis, and then 69% gave a negative response to the state fiscal conditions. Of course, that's why so many people are leaving the state. If you add all those things together, we've talked about it with our fiscal house in the state, but also about the cost on you and me and why so many people have decided to leave in droves. Unfortunately, I'm sure you've known some people, maybe family, maybe friends, who have made that decision. But I do think, and that number is still very high, 73% said crime is a major problem. Still very high. I'm a little surprised it's not higher than that. Because, as I said, that's what got Lee Zeldin to do so well and really won Republicans the majority in the House because of his campaigning on the issue and winning seats in New York that were not expected to go Republican. We are out of time for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Again, here's a couple quick things. Cartels are sending migrant mobs of thousands to overwhelm the U.S. border because they're already really, what's the word I'm looking for, overworked at the border. They're already stressed by the numbers coming in, so they're flooding to get more in to overwhelm the system. Another piece that's coming from NBC, Matt Gaetz is widely expected to run for Florida governor because DeSantis is going to be done with term limits. So Matt Gaetz could be running for Florida governor, just something to throw in mind. The Biden administration unleashes 50-year mining and oil drilling ban across thousands of acres in New Mexico, and now the WHO demands answers from China on COVID. As the New York Post says, it's too late. Thank you to Office for the Aging Director, Patty Baruti. That senior forum's coming up September 21st at 8:30 a.m. at the First Presbyterian Church in Bath. Have a great day, everyone. We'll be back tomorrow morning with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.